Hi, I'm Mark Taylor, and it's time again for the Mark Taylor Show. This week's guest is Stan Smith from St. George, who is used to be the mayor of St. George and a sergeant on the St. George Police Force. Welcome to the show, Stan.
Thank you for inviting me, Mark. Appreciate it.
No problem. I think we talked about it earlier. This is, you only go on TV every 15 years.
That's about it, yeah.
We were on, when I had the show back in Penfield years ago, you were one of my, I think, the first or second guest on my show. So we're going back then. You were, at the time, I think you said you had been mayor 8 years at the time. So you're 8 years into your term, which is, as you tell me, is about halfway through.
Yeah, that's right. I had 16 full years.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had to, obviously, when you were going to be the mayor, you had to move into the town, right? Because
yes, I lived on Riverview Avenue. I moved into the town. I'd been in the town probably about a year, a little less than that.
Okay.
When I ran and was successful. And
did you serve on council at all?
Never did. No,
no,
I was going for the gold.
So, what prompted you to do it? Was it
just my interest in politics and so on, and I just felt that hey, maybe I get something I can give here and so on.
Well, obviously, the people liked what you did, or you wouldn't have been there that long.
Yeah, they were. I made a lot of good friends in town. I mean, you had your problems here and there along the way, but I always called them back. It didn't matter what it was.
Well,
I'd call them or go see or whatever.
Well, I think you're the third mayor I've had on here. I've had John Craig, who used to be the mayor in St. Andrews. Alan Gilmore was the mayor in St. Stephen.
Right. Yes.
And they told me the same thing, that a lot of times you knew the calls weren't going to be all that friendly when you called them back.
You didn't really want to call them.
But you thought, well, you don't take the bad with the good or whatever. So you're the only returnee from the show so far. Now, I'm sure I've got the welcome mat out to a few people, but nobody seems to be biting on it. I don't know if you're brave or crazy, Stan, or you're just one. The thing about it, I guess, as I mentioned in the introduction, was before I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves, because you were a police officer in the town.
That's right, yes.
And from 79?
Yeah, 79. I spent about 8 years on the force there and, got down to PEI once I got my feet under me there. I was hired by former Mayor Vern Southard in council.
I was going to ask you who the mayor was when you were there.
Yes, and then I went on to work for Mayor Nathan Rubin in that council as well.
Okay.
Had a good rapport with the town, and a lot of people used to say, why'd you ever quit? And I told them, I said, I used to get tired of fighting with people in the middle of the night I didn't want to fight with to start with, but actually it wasn't that bad. There was a lot of good people there, and and it was interesting, very interesting, and I got to go to Charlottetown a few times for upgrading and stuff like that and so on, but no, it was good. It was good, Mark.
Well, I think you had a reputation for being fair and reasonable as well. I mean, if people meet you halfway, that was kind of the message that I got from you, because I mean, we had some dealings. I didn't have any criminal dealings with you, but certainly we run into you from time to time, and you more or less just said, you don't hurt me, I won't hurt you. It's the same sort of thing, which is the way to be, I guess.
True. I guess I've always people ask me, and I'll say, I always like to treat people the way I'd like to be treated myself.
Right. The golden rule.
Yeah, exactly.
We talked about it on here one other time, though. The golden rule sometimes can be the people with the gold make the rules.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So you had other jobs leading up to that, or you?
My first basic start in life, I guess, was I worked for NBDOT.
Okay.
And I was asphalt soils.
Your dad worked there, didn't he?
My father worked just as a night watchman around the garage and that years ago. He worked. My dad worked mostly for Lester McKay and Wesley Groom and those people out at the Blueberry stuff.
Okay.
Yep. But no, I went there in 1970 and stayed till June of '79 and went directly on to the police department from there. And over the years, like I say, with the police department, once I finished up there, I had several different jobs, but things that really I've just stop gaps. But I always liked construction and everything, and I've just finished up pretty well last year on construction.
I think when I went, of course, I'm lazier than a rug on Valium, so I actually did a little bit of research here. I'm quite pretty lazy guy, but I did do a little research. I went back and watched the show from that we had done in either '99 or 2000, and you had spoken at that time of being in the police and stuff, and you said that a lot of times it was more of a case of being a social worker than enforcing the laws. Now, you elaborated on it that time. If you'd like to really elaborate on it now, that would be...
Well, it's true. I mean, you know, you dealt with a lot of people around the town. I mean, for instance, if, say, I know now times have changed now, and if someone's impaired behind the wheel, well, they're going to get nailed. But back then, if someone was halfway reasonable, tall, and sensible, you would take them home or whatever, because you kind of had to look at, you knew everybody in the town. And you'd think, God, if I arrest him tonight, who's going to feed his wife and kids tomorrow or whatever, you know, and so on. But I would always give them one warning.
And if somebody wants to make a fool out of you, look out.
Right on. The next time, son, you were gone. But I like to be that way. It made me, feel better about it. And
I think you had related at the time of some dealings with some young people in the town. You related one case where you went to, you had arrested 2 girls, I believe, for, I was break and enter or something like that. And one of the girls, there was nobody there, her family, nobody there to support her.
That's right, yeah.
And you ended up in front of Judge Rice at the time.
Judge Rice was the judge, that's right.
And you said, look, can I offer some support here? And he let you do that. I mean,
that's right.
Which is unheard of.
No, he was really good. I did that on different occasions, and he was very good. And Randy DiPaolo, of course, was the prosecutor here at the time. I worked a lot with him over those years. He was always the prosecutor and so on. And but yeah, it worked out good. And a lot of those years later, before I get back into the construction, Sybil and I ran a store in St. George.
That's what I was going to mention, Recross and Pete's.
Yeah, exactly, and a convenience store there, and a lot of the people that we dealt with over those years were best customers.
Oh yeah, and so I mean, nobody had any ill will. I think people have the advantage of looking back on things. Sometimes you go, and I'm sure you have as well. You think, well, I wish I would have done things differently. I handled that wrong. I did that, or whatever. So I'm sure that's what they probably thought of you and thinking, well, Stan arrested me, and I got a fine out of it, and all this stuff. But you probably get what you got coming to you a lot of times, and that's the I think people do realize that.
As long as you were fair with it, as long as you in your heart you were fair. I mean, you had to do your job. It's simple as that. But I had good relation with, like we were talking earlier, I had good relationships with the St. John's City Police, with the St. George RCMP, who in a small town like St. George, 4 guys working, 2 of them probably away and 2 there. When I first started, we worked 7 days. Don Corning was chief.
Yeah, I was going to mention Don was the chief. And your relationship with Don was a great guy. And Don's no longer with us, sad, but Don was a good guy.
Yeah, and Don would work 7 days. Covering her 24 hours, and then I would work the next 7.
Wow.
There were just 2 of us, and we had 1 auxiliary, poor Freddie McKillop. He's gone as well, you know.
That's true.
But, with the RCMP there, like, made a lot of good friends, and with the St. Stephen Police when they were there. The border people, because you were always dealing with things from St. Stephen to St. John.
For sure. And I guess we discussed off camera as well, was the communications were different then. There wasn't email or anything like that. It was done by phone. And that was the way you got your, the heads up that maybe somebody with a little bit of a questionable reputation is coming into the town or something like that.
And like if we wanted to run a check on someone, we always did it through the RCMP and so on. They had CPIC and everything, and it was very interesting working, and you get a lot of experience from that type of thing.
And on this tape or the show that we watched, there was you and I got talking about we were talking about Judge Rice and stuff, and I went down one time and I watched the proceedings. We used to go watch the proceedings once in a while. Boring times, obviously. You got looking for somebody, looks for entertainment, go to court, whatever. And there was a chap in there. That was, and you were the arresting officer at the time. There's a chap in there. He got caught drinking a beer at the laundromat, and you rolled by in the police car, and you spotted it according to your eye. I mean, something caught you. You say, well, that doesn't just look right. No, there's no licensed establishment at the laundromat these days. So you hauled it in, and after you looked through a bunch of wash machines, you found the bottle of beer. And so I remember this story. And you had to get up and relate the story, or I think maybe the prosecutor probably get up and tell the story. And he goes down, he looks over his glasses, and he says, "Is this where we get the term suds?"
I remember that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I
yeah,
can remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a funny story, and of course everybody's laughing and stuff.
Yeah.
But Judge Rice had a really good sense of humor.
And Judge Rice impressed me many, many times. Of all those years I was there, and he would preside over court,
Right.
and someone would plead not guilty, and he would listen to the testimony from all sides.
Right.
And sometime he would say, "Just a minute, did you not say back there to a policeman or whoever?"
Try to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, and he had a great mind. He remembered things, and I only once that I ever can remember thinking, "I think you made the wrong decision." It was an impaired driving case,
Right.
and he found the guy guilty. And I kind of felt in my mind that the guy might have, with what was presented, that he might have been innocent. But that was the only one. He had a great mind for the law.
But when you were in front of him as a police officer or forest ranger or whatever you were doing, a warden or whatever, you had to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed.
Absolutely.
Because he'd throw it out if you.
Absolutely.
He was looking after the little guy. I mean, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of times before we ever got to the judge, we'd have to go to the Crown.
Right.
Randy or one of the fellows filling in, and if you didn't have what was supposed to be,
he wouldn't want to throw it in front of Judge Rice because he knew wasn't going to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did you? So when you're in the police force, you must have run into some friends, relatives, and you stop in cars and you're going, "Oh, okay, here we go." I mean, that must happen from time to time.
My brother-in-law used to say in-laws and outlaws.
Yeah, so that'll be certainly a challenge. Like people that would be friends of yours, right?
Exactly. And I mean, again, it was, you'd give some people breaks, but if they try to take advantage of you, you had to do your job.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you didn't, they'd be, they'd walk all over you.
Oh yeah. So then when we'll fast forward. So when you get out of the police force, then obviously you can't be in the police force and mayor at the same time. You offered your name as mayor, and
actually I went after I get out of there. I ran the convenience store.
Right.
Then once I get out of the convenience store, I kicked around selling life insurance for a short period of time. Went to work in the fishing industry for a short. Not that they didn't use me good, and not that that they weren't fair and everything like that. But it just wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. So I went back into construction. But after I get out of the police force, I took and I ran for mayor and
16 terms. Well, that's
16 years.
16 years. 16 years. It was what? 4 terms? Is it 4 years then?
Yeah,
or 3?
It was 3.
3. Okay.
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was 3, 3, 3, and then they went to 4.
Yeah, because Alan mentioned that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Alan and I were in Mayor.
Oh yeah.
Gilmore
he was at the same time.
Yeah, we were in Cuba together as well. And,
okay.
Great guy, Alan.
Yeah,
great guy.
Yeah, he was just on here last week actually.
Right on, yeah.
So there's a lot of rewards obviously with being a mayor. I mean, you look and you see things that happened under your watch.
Yeah,
it's a sense of accomplishment.
It's really good, and like I always had good councilors, good deputy mayors, you know, and so on. And like Alan probably told you, the only time you get to vote was in the event of a tie. I mean, so, you had to try to get your way in other ways, or get something that you felt was good. You'd have to, do your homework.
Well, that's what John had mentioned as well, that I didn't realize that the council pretty well controls things. Mm-hmm. You're there, as obviously you go to functions and meetings and stuff like that as representative of the town, but they are in charge of recreation policing, and they all have different portfolios, right? So they kind of look after things, and then you're there in case there's a tie.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to vote on stuff?
Yes, actually, I wasn't there very long. I hadn't been there very long, and that was when biotherm was going to come to St. George.
Right.
And
which was fish waste and stuff.
Fish waste and stuff. Yeah. And the only thing that I knew about that was a couple of the councilors told me they had been to Eastport, Maine, and looked at a little program they had on there, some kind of a demonstration. And I asked them quite a few questions about smells and all that and everything. And I know the government at the time, the provincial government, was pushing to get that through and everything, and
Yeah,
it came 3 and 3, and I was,
you had to vote on it.
I had to vote on it.
Wow.
And I looked at it from the point, Mark, I thought, okay, if I vote for it, and there's a bad smell in the town of St. George, it's going to be here forever. We're not going to be able to get rid of it.
You'll never bring another tourist in there?
No, and it would just have been bad news, eh?
Right.
So I said,
but on the other hand, it was jobs too, which is another thing.
Exactly.
Probably good paying jobs.
Yeah, and so I said no. I voted it down. There was a few of them upset about it, but like I say, I'm glad I did. I never ever looked back on that because St. George is a nice place to live right now, and that might not have done a bit of harm.
No.
But then again, if it would have been going all over,
where they were going to put it, it would certainly would have been in the middle of the town, not in the middle of the town,
you had a high
but
school
on
there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You had RCMP detachments there, and you had everything on the hill there, Mount
Yep.
Pleasant
Oh, yeah.
Avenue, and over the other way. A lot of people building new homes there.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
No,
it's kind of I think the old saying is NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it located in Bayside, if I'm not mistaken,
finally,
which is kind of out of the way.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, but like I say, that was one of the bigger decisions that I did make, and on my own. I was the only one there.
Yeah, well, you had to.
I had to. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not like you could push that one under the rug and say, we'll cover that next week, boys.
I'll be away.
Exactly, I'm on vacation next week. Because I think, if we mentioned it, I think you mentioned some deputy mayors. Sharon Tucker.
Sharon Tucker
was a deputy mayor under you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Bruce Jackson.
Both
of them. Like Bruce was a very smart guy.
Yeah.
And Bruce knew fish.
Yeah.
And everything. And of course, Sharon knew a lot about the health care. And Sharon always came to council prepared.
Right.
You could, they'd start talking about something, she'd just go through her book and look back 3 months, when I'd be scratching, trying to find notes in my pockets.
Exactly, yeah. Wow.
But yeah, no, we had a very, very good council.
Because you have to.
Yeah.
They got to have a common goal. Mm-hmm. They got to look after the town and things like that. Yeah. And at the end of the day, rightly or wrongly, they can vote you guys out next time.
There's a lot of councillors I'm not sure about right now, but there's some of the councillors in St. George, like Bruce and Sterling and them guys, they were there a long time. And of course, then Danny Henry was mayor for a short period of time, and so on. Yeah.
Well, it's so you, when you did it, was there anything you look back on you wish you would have done differently? Was there something that you thought, oh gosh, I was...
Can't think of a thing.
No. Well, that's good if you can't think.
But Ross Norman was the town manager when I was there. And the first day I met with Ross, we sat down, and I said to Ross, Ross, look, I don't care where you got to go, whether you got to go to Fredericton or Ottawa or wherever, but I said, I'd like for you to get out there and try to get as many government grants and as many of these here programs that are going on to get us rocking, in the town, get things on the move.
Right.
And Harold Colbert was the federal member at the time. Harold was good to me, and he was there for one term. Yep. And then Sheldon Lee was exceptional. Sheldon gave us a lot of things for the town if we needed some reclaim or anything. And through Sheldon and Ottawa, under both federal, provincial, and Liberal governments, we were able to increase our new pipes in the town, our water and sewage and things like that, and get the industrial park up and running. That was
a big thing. The industrial park has added a lot of tax revenue.
And the Day Adventure Center and the cleanup at Canal and some of the work we did in conjunction with them, the town, we took that over and sort of looked after it and so on. And one thing added to the other, and it was good. It was really good, yeah.
Well, when you are the mayor, obviously you're visible. Everybody knows who you are and everything like that. Everybody knew who you were beforehand. If you're out in a social setting somewhere and you may be out having a meal or something with your family or just alone, people would come up to you, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And they weren't always probably friendly. I mean, somebody would go, "Hey Stan, how you doing?" Yeah. But then I'm sure there's people that had access to grind.
Yeah, for sure. And when we changed the over by Lateet Road, when we put in the divider there so the traffic could go up the hill and back, I bet I had a dozen people come mad about that, but look, it works great.
Yeah.
Went
Oh, yeah.
straight,
I mean,
but, you know, just,
some
it was
people
change.
don't,
People
you know,
don't like
people don't like
change.
change.
No, that's right. Yeah.
They say change is inevitable unless it's out of a vending machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I look back on the show that we did back years ago, there was things on there that I guess the RCMP came into the town as the police force. That was done before you took over, right? So when you got in as mayor, it was already been decided.
Yes, that was already done. That was done under Vance Craig's watch. Yeah,
Okay.
right on. And you know, like back then, I was not dead against that. No, because like, you know, things were just different circumstances on the force. One guy leaving and going here, and other people here and there, and so on. And you know, I really believe that at that point in time that the town did need the RCMP, and it was more efficient, cost efficient.
I'm going to say,
number one.
You got to look at it from two different perspectives. You were a police at one time, and then you get to look at from the mayor's chair, and you're going, okay, now I got to look after the dollars and cents. You know, and I'm sure there was some things that were well thought out. They have to be. Yeah,
and like, you know, my idea of it too, and still the same today, no different with the RCMP. Like, let's just say, and God forbid, that we had a major crime in the town of St. George right today.
Right.
Well, the town of St. George is pretty well only got to pay that $150,000 or $200,000 a year that they're paying for those police services under the RCMP.
Right.
Because all the rest is pretty well thrown in with it. They've got every bit of expertise that you would ever want.
Well, look what happened in Moncton with the the lockdown that they had up there, and you know, that could happen anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, if you're a municipal police force, pretty hard for 3 or 4 guys to, you know, not nail that down without some help.
Oh, absolutely. And like, you know, like if you, like say you had an armed robbery in St. George and you had 4 policemen, and say it was a stranger and you didn't know it was one of the local yokels that had pulled it off or had no idea, that might go on for years if they let you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, trying to find out who they
sure.
were, you know. It cost a lot of money, and, you know. But anyway, like I know some people criticize the RCMP, but all in all, I think they do a good job. I really do, and they, you know, they have their headaches like everybody else does. But all you got to do is read the St. Croix Courier every week, and you can pretty well tell they're busy.
So when you're in the police force and you're looking after things like that, and invariably even back in those days, you'd get the heads up if there was somebody coming into the town that was a little bit.
Oh yeah, you knew.
You
knew. Yeah.
And you know, I'm sure it was pretty laid back as being in a small town and everything. But still, there's that time in the morning. You're 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. You're hauling somebody over. They've got plates from another province or whatever. You don't know what you're getting into.
Anybody tells you they weren't scared at one time or another being a policeman, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
You know, because you're only human and you're out there, and like I say, I mean, 2 o'clock in the morning was nothing to be out there alone.
No.
Because there was nobody else there. You know, we only had a small force, and you know, you relied on an auxiliary, or sometime the RCMP would give you a hand or whatever, but most of the time, you know, if it happened quick, you know, you were the only one there, you know.
Oh, okay. And I think you and I had discussed, once in a while, there was a bad actor or something that could...
as I told you before, this one time I was off duty. I was on my 7 days off, and Donnie was in court in St. Stephen, down in St. Stephen, and I got a call. I was in the office, and I just happened to go in there to do something, and there was a call, and a car accident on Main Street. A gentleman had been run over.
Right.
He was walking down Main on the sidewalk, and this car come along. The guy was looking around and not paying attention, ran him over right there. Oh, hurt him bad. Hurt him really bad.
Yep. An elderly gentleman.
Yes, and we, you know, I got there and I called the RCMP, and Wayne Crow come eventually there, maybe 10 minutes or so after, and got there, and I get out of the car and checked on the guy that was hurt, and he was in bad shape. Called the ambulance, no ambulance, it was in St. John.
Uh-oh.
So I called Blacks Harbor Hospital, and I said, can we move this man? And they said, yes, but you got to do it carefully, and so on. So when Wayne got there, we had to move him and put him in the car, but before we did...
You also had the suspect there,
too. There was other people there, and we had this guy, we couldn't let him go.
No.
And so anyway, there was a lot of people had stopped, and there were people giving him aid and so on, and I approached this gentleman and I said to him, I need your license registration. What happened here? And he told me he was looking around and he wasn't lying. He said, I didn't see him until I looked up and there he was, eh?
Right.
And he gave me his license and registration. And I looked at the license and registration and I said to him, this doesn't really make sense, this license. He said, what do you mean? I said, this says that you're like 45 or 45 years old or whatever, and you don't appear that old to me or whatever, eh? Or he was 35 and he looked 55.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever, eh? And he said, and he had a good story. He said, well, look, he said, I was in an industrial accident. He said, I had 3 fingers cut off, and he did. They were all gone.
Wow.
He said, I had these cut off, and he said, it made me prematurely gray and a haggard look.
Oh,
he had
God.
fat, eh? So, but there was just something that we didn't like about the situation, and I told him to go. We followed him down to the we had this gentleman in the back seat, or the front seat of the RCMP car. I was holding him around the shoulder so he wouldn't bang himself.
Wow.
We were heading to Black Arbor with him to the hospital, and we made him go into the RCMP office, and we stopped out front to make sure he walked in, and they knew inside he was coming, so they held on to him till we got back.
Wow.
As we get down to Black Arbor, and we got looking through some of this paperwork, he had this name come up, and it rang a bell with me, so I went to CPIC and we called it in.
Yeah.
He had murdered the oldest living female doctor in Canada.
Wow.
And
so he was probably a wanted man, I guess.
He was wanted for breaking his parole. He was on parole from the murder. He had done 10 or 15 years in penitentiary.
But he probably wasn't supposed to go far.
No, and he was working in Halifax at the SPCA at that time.
Wow, okay.
And he was one of those people that they had a problem with their better half. They, get in a big row, and away he'd go and do things and break in and stuff, eh? And he broke into, I think, somewhere in Amherst and in Truro, and stayed in St. John overnight, took the TV out of there, brought that along with him.
Jeez.
So when we searched his vehicle and checked him out good, and I walked in the office, and he was sitting there, and
you must have been an eerie feeling come over you.
Yeah, I confronted him. I confronted him, and he admitted it right away who he was, and and so on, and. Again, he was another guy. He asked me, he said, can you do me? We were taking him down to St. Stephen, lock him up. He said, can you do me one favor? And I said, if I can, I will. He said, would you tell the judge I stopped? And I said, if he'll let me, yes, I will. And Judge Rice let me tell him.
Wow.
Or let me make the statement.
It might have helped a little bit with the sentences anyway. But still, that's just a sample of things that could happen in a small town like that.
Right on. Yeah, you never know. You never know.
No, for sure.
You just never know. And on different occasions, like I remember one time we met a guy out back of the old Birch's restaurant there.
Yeah.
He was a big man, and he was not all there, as they say, or whatever. And myself and I believe it was Al Grant were out there, and boy, I'll tell you, he was a strange man. Yeah. He was a strange man.
Well, that's the nature of the beast, being in that job. But you know something, Stan? It's 30 minutes has gone by so fast here. I'm sure we could talk probably for another 30 minutes or an hour, no problem at all. But
don't forget my 10,000.
No, exactly. Well, the check's in the mail. Okay.
Right on.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Stan. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Same here, Mark, and I really enjoyed coming over and getting to say a few things about the town of St. George. It's
fascinating to go back a few years. I'd say maybe another 15 years we'll get back on again.
Right on. Yeah, I'll be about 75 then.
Right on. Well, that's another episode of the Mark Taylor Show. Please join in again next week. Thank you.